I think the TV side of Star Wars is really good at the moment. Now give us a movie like that. This is the Review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster, and with me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sakar has to offer. Let me introduce them to you. First up, Mr. Taylor. First, how are you today, sir?
Good.
With us is also Murph. How are you, man?
Very good.
And last but certainly not least, voice only from his throne room in Hades, Mr. Lord Deathman. How are you, man?
I am totally wizard.
Today we're going to talk about episode 5 called The Pirate of season 3 of The Mandalorian. But before we do, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you really can't get enough of us, you can join our ranks. Go to Sakar at sakar.freeforms.net. Set up an account, get to know us. And yes, we herewith invite you to join us in our podcast and reviews. We would love to have you on the show. Consider this your final warning. After this point, the spoilers are incoming. So if you haven't seen this week's episode yet, go check that out first and then come back to the video. Navarro is under attack and Magistrate Grief Karga, no, let me correct that. High Magistrate Grief Karga is asking the Republic for help. But they apparently have more urgent matters to attend to, or do they? The Children of the Watch are being asked to free Navarro of the pirate plague, and that leads to some interesting developments that actually were predicted right here on the show. So why don't you follow us? We know our stuff. Taylor, let's start with you. We have been talking about a sense of direction for season 3 of The Mandalorian. Whether that was a good thing or bad thing, opinions differ. But now we get some sense of direction. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this episode in general. The action scenes were good. The story was good. And of course, it was part of the larger universe. And as you said, it did set up at least some things to happen in the future. So overall, yeah, I think it was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, satisfied with that. And anything that stood out for you?
Well, I liked seeing the pirates again. And like I said, I think the action scenes were pretty good, pretty exciting. I like that the Mandalorians are now have a new home on a planet that has welcomed them, thanks to their help. And of course, the whole story with Bo-Katan now being chosen by the Armorer to go out and bring more Mandalorians in so that they can reunite all the tribes. That all stood out. Again, it was all pretty well executed.
Yeah, I agree, actually. Yeah, talk about that Bo-Katan storyline. Lord Deathman, the reunification and reclaiming of Mandalore. That's what we predicted would happen, and it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
Yeah, I thought that was done very well in this particular episode. Bo-Katan sort of straddling the Children of the Watch and her clan, Clan Kreese. It makes sense, and I really like the idea that the Armorer sort of could see past the dogma of her particular faction to say that it is time to bring all of the Mandalorians together, and with them getting this tract of land from Karga, everything seems like it's going somewhere. I think the fan speculation or the fan discussion around this episode was that, it feels like we finally have a direction. And, everybody really wants serialized storytelling on this. Nobody is here for the one-offs that don't lead to something bigger. And I guess that's fair enough. But what I will say is that while we did get a direction, it certainly doesn't make up for some of the threads that are still dangling from previous episodes. So the show has a new mission statement, but it hasn't kind of resolved all of the pieces of previous episodes.
Did you enjoy this week's episode?
I did. I really enjoyed it. I thought the action was superb. I thought the performances were really great. There was hardly anything to complain about in this episode. And watching this episode in particular, for some reason, really feels like the secret showrunner of The Mandalorian is Jim Henson, returned from the grave, R.I.P. Uh, because I'm just blown away by the amount of incredible practical makeup effects and puppetry we've gotten all season. So it's great to see that tradition is still alive and well in live action, even if we don't get it so much in the movies. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Murph, they are tying every episode together in some way until now. And then they end with like Moff Gideon. He's on the loose. He has been liberated by Mandalorians. As we are made to believe, I saw some fan speculation that there are Imperial Mandalorians somewhere in one of those cartoons. I'm not up to speed on them. I'm really sorry, Star Wars fandom. Don't hate me. Do you think this is a setup for that? And will they also be reunited if they get into the show with all the other Mandalorians? What do you think?
I do kind of, obviously they're kind of leading us down that path already, but I do think that maybe that's the direction they'll go. Like maybe one of the, I don't know how many tribes of Mandalorians there are, or, I guess whenever Mandalore fell, they all went to the wind, and, some of them maybe became a little bit pro-Imperial, or at least working for the Empire at some point just to get by. And maybe it was a group like that. I don't think it's like a big setup or anything, like, oh, they're framing the Mandalorians or something, because I don't think the Mandalorians really matter in the grand scheme of things. But I do think that if they go down that route, that kind of ties Bo-Katan's story to this, where if she's here to unite all the Mandalorian tribes, and one of them is like, no, we're still with the Empire guys, that might cause a little friction. And I guess that's where I think it's going to head is, she's going to approach these Mandalorians who are up to no good, and they're not going to hear it. And it's going to be a struggle. Maybe there will be Mandalorian on Mandalorian fighting, and, we'll see what happens. But that's where I guess that's headed as of right now, with a few-minute scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this week's episode?
I thought this episode was great. I thought that this is pretty much exactly what I want and expect from the Mandalorian series. Like, nice balance of action, taking old plot threads and furthering them, or in the case of maybe the pirates, ending them. Although the one pirate got away, the big bad guy got, not the big bad, but the one that you hate more than all the other pirates, he kind of got away. So, he's still dangling out there a little bit. But I thought it developed almost all of the threads that we had built up in the previous episodes, where some of those episodes felt a little disjointed and they weren't tied together. I feel like we're kind of seeing how everything's starting to tie together now, at least for this season, or hopefully for this season. So, yeah, very satisfied with this episode. I had one complaint in the first 5 minutes, but we can get into it later if you want.
No, well, shoot.
So it's a small thing, but it's like a pet peeve. But whenever the Captain Seaweed or whatever was calling down to Apollo Creed, I'm gonna forget everyone's name, so I'm just gonna go with whatever they used to be. Whenever they were talking, the pirate captain called him. And then as he was signing off, all frustrated that Apollo wouldn't give up the planet to him, he was like, "Now don't call me again," or something like that. And I'm just like, but you called him. And it's a thing that happens all the time where it just doesn't make sense. You just needed to go through that and just say it right. But it nagged me for the following 5 minutes of that scene. I was just like, come on, why did they put that in there? But that's all, it's pretty lighthearted criticism. I was really happy with this episode.
Yeah, I also have a small complaint about this week's episode. I absolutely adored this week's episode. It's what I like. I mean, and I will get to that with Lord Deathman in a second. But what I didn't really like was the, well, let's just say, elaborate way the Mandalorians got to Navarro. Uh, they sent this guy all the way up to, first we go to the that X-wing base, and then he has to go to Coruscant, and then he flies all the way back to where the Mandalorians are, and he only knows that because of that droid. But how the hell does he know this droid is with Mando, Din Djarin? So that didn't make sense to me. And yeah, couldn't they have done that a little bit more nicely, Murph?
Yeah, it felt like we just need these 2 points to connect so that the Mandalorians can hear about Navarro, and we wrote it in that way. I never really thought about like the droids having full autonomy, where like was that droid in the know on all the stuff that's happening, like every signal that gets sent out? Does he have like a news reel going through like his circuits all the time, so he's like in his head like, oh my god, Navarro's under attack, and is he the one sending that? I guess I never really think about the droids in Star Wars that way, but maybe that's how they are. They're tying all the information together secretly.
Yeah. Okay. Lord Deathman, you are my fellow Trekkie here on the show. And actually, The Mandalorian Season 3 reminds me a lot of Trek. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it's all standalone episodes, and then all of a sudden they throw in an episode to create the bigger threat. And not threat, but threat. How to say that in English? But you know what I mean. And then they tie it all together a little bit, but that makes all those standalone episodes also a little bit better. And actually, I think they're doing it better than Trek, but we have already said that a lot on Star Wars TV lately. But how do you see this?
Yeah, I also, as a massive Trek fan, I think we are much more acclimated to serialized storytelling, or to episodic storytelling rather, than maybe other people are, or younger generations that are kind of in the streaming world of like, I need to binge 8 episodes of this thing, and it needs to be like one whole story of 8 to 10 episodes of something that I'm following. So, people kind of need that reason to keep tuning in. Um, but The Mandalorian is taking a page out of the book of Star Trek, and it is a little bit more episodic, and I kind of enjoy that because, not to betray an aging Death Lord, but I remember the days where you could kind of just cherry pick an episode of Star Trek and say, oh, you know what, I'd like to see that one. You don't have to make an investment in all 22 or 24 episodes of an entire season. So I'm not as offended by the idea that this is partially episodic and partially serialized. Although I do feel like they really do need to start tying up some of the dangles that are still lying around. It's kind of getting late in the day as far as the season is concerned. I think we're still on the early side actually, but that being said, time the time in the hourglass is running down. So I appreciate it, but I've read online and I've looked at the Twitters, and people don't. I mean, they really they're like, this needs to be an epic saga that goes on for 10 episodes, and so has to struggle his way to the end to get to the MacGuffin. But you know what? I've got no look. It's all love. Whatever you want out of the show, I hope it manages to be that for you.
What dangles are you specifically referring to?
Well, I do want to get back to the Imperials, to what's going on as far as the repatriated Imperial, whose name I'm clearly going to forget. I think it's Ella Kane, if I'm not mistaken.
Elia?
But, or Elia or Ella. The last name I'm pretty sure about is Kane. I do want to get back to that in terms of like what is the big picture in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, because they've thrown some information out about cloning via the doctor character who sort of got betrayed by her a couple of episodes back. And I was actually surprised at how this really mirrors weirdly what was going on in Andor, where Supervisor Miro was able to see a series of disconnected events happening throughout the galaxy and kind of put it together that the rebellion was behind all of it and that these weren't seemingly random threats and raids and things like that. Now we're on the other side where, and there's another character whose name I'm going to forget. I know he's a captain somebody, Tea Leaf, the older gentleman with the salt and pepper beard, who's I've forgotten his name. Tiva. There you go. Thank you. So Captain Tiva's kind of seeing that, a series of random events that we're not privy to. We're not privy to all of them as viewers, but I think he's starting to recognize a pattern of sort of ex-imperial activity that he's putting together. But he can't get his bureaucratic bosses, who are so concerned with the transition from imperial systems to New Republic style governance. They're so consumed by that in the bureaucracy that they're not actually looking at these things and starting to put it together. By the way, it was weird and pleasantly surprising to see Tim Meadows doing a fantastic job of playing the bureaucrat whose name I think was Tuttle, if I'm not mistaken. I forget what his maybe Colonel, something like that. But in any event, I think his name Tuttle is a reference to another film called Brazil, which in and of itself is another reference to 1984. So who knows what kind of statement the filmmakers or the showrunners are trying to make with that. But he did an excellent job of playing a frustratingly oblique bureaucrat who can't seem to be decisive about what it is we need to do and needs tons and tons of evidence before he can make any kind of decision. So yeah, I guess that's the main thread that I'm referring to, but I'm sure if you keep scratching at earlier episodes, there's probably a few more things they need to deal with. And I'm not over the top or out of my mind with them doing it, but I do kind of want it to be a little bit. I mean, you're either episodic or you're serialized. I don't know that you can do both successfully, although clearly they're trying to do it this season.
Yeah. Well, Taylor, that main thread what Lord Desmond was talking about, it's clearly setting up the First Order, right? We're working towards the sequels, don't you think so? And how do you feel about it? And does this add something to those sequels for you? Because we never discussed them on the channel, but they are, at least you can say, divisive among the fandom.
Yeah, they are, and I think Lord Deathman and Merv are right. I think the captain at one point said there's something going on out there, and it involves the pirates and the Imperials and everything else, and I'm guessing that is the First Order is forming out there in that area of the galaxy. I really liked that scene where he went to the Republic and tried to get the assistance, and Elia, who's I can only assume she's a spy for the First Republic at this point, kind of shot him down, saying, "Well, that planet hasn't joined the New Republic yet. They haven't signed it. Maybe they need to get spanked to encourage them to come in here and join us. But I'm not sure if that's what she really wants, or if she just wants them to be destroyed completely. So she don't have to worry about them." But I thought that scene was handled really well. I like that the captain is kind of out there on the frontier, trying to do a job with over a vast area of space with just a few people. His base, when that little shot they showed of his base with the Quonset huts and the ships, it all looked pretty old and pretty run down. This Republic is really not on its feet yet at this point, except on Coruscant, it's built a nice bureaucracy, but as far as executing everything out in the rest of the galaxy, they haven't gotten there yet. And I thought they did a good job of showing that. couple, little nitpicks about the episode. So pirate guy calls down to Apollo Creed and threatens them, and he says no, and then okay, so open fire, and they start bombarding, and then Apollo calls for help, and then the guy tries to call the Republic for help. He doesn't get any response, so he goes in person, talks to him, comes back, goes to the Mandalorian. Anyway, my question is, how much time is passing here? How long are these shells raining down on this city while all this is going on?
How many people are dying?
Light speed travel.
Apparently, you can jump within 5 minutes from the outer rim to Coruscant and back.
I guess. So. I guess so, which makes you wonder, why is it so hard to send help then, if it's that close and that easy? So I thought that was a little bit. The other little nitpick is, that planet is under attack. It's being destroyed. The whole city is being shelled. We've got to evacuate. And then when they get outside the city, there's like 30 people there. I mean, come on, the amount of money they're spending on this show, they can either hire some more extras for a day, or they can CGI a big crowd to make it look like at least this isn't like Mayberry. It's a town a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah.
Just a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I said, I thought it all worked well. Now the end scene, of course, was very good, where the captain finds the derelict ship and realizes it was Moff Gideon's transport. And I don't know what the answer is as far as the Mandalorian medal. My first thought was someone is trying to not necessarily frame the Mandalorians to get rid of them, but just simply deflect attention away from themselves onto the Mandalorians as just a target of opportunity. Well, we got to get them to blame somebody besides us. So let's put some Mandalorian stuff in it. So that may be part of it, or it may be Mandalorians that are working with the First Order or whatever it's called at this point. But I am anxious to see Moff Gideon again. Hopefully he'll be back, and like Lord Deathman said, we'll see some more Imperials at some point. But I don't know if how that's gonna work into the other thread. And I'm like you guys. I'm perfectly happy. I really enjoy episodic television. I grew up with the original Star Trek and tons of other shows that were very, very episodic. But the first two seasons of this show were less. I mean, they were a little bit episodic. There was always something that happened in each episode, but there was still a single main story arc throughout the whole episode. And this one has been a little bit less so and a little bit more episodic. And that's fine if now the last 4 episodes or whatever it ends up being is more of a single arc. But what I don't want to have is too many parallel arcs going on at one time. So I want the Mandalore nation rebuilding to somehow tie into the First Order and the Imperial activity, whatever it is. Right now they're a little bit too separate, but I assume at some point they're going to come together. But I thought this episode did a good job, and I also agree with Lord Deathman about the armorer. When we first met her, she felt very much like some kind of stereotypical zealot type character, but she's not. She's actually proven to be pretty wise and a good leader as well.
No.
And someone who listens and pays attention to what's going on, as opposed to being blind to it and only following her own religion or beliefs, whatever it is.
Yeah, she has an eye for the greater good and for the bigger picture. I mean, her goals are higher than just being a dogmatic priest of it's my way or the highway kind of stuff. I mean, she can look beyond herself, and that's always a sign of a great leader. I agree. Sorry to bother you. Go.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think her priority is all of Mandalore, and she's willing to compromise where needed. she's showing her face, which really the whole helmet thing always makes me laugh. But okay, but she's now let Bo-Katan take off her helmet. Bo-Katan now has a first-hand knowledge of both sides of this system, both sides of this culture, this Mandalorian culture. So she's the one, hopefully, that can bring it together. And I hope we get a whole bunch of Mandalorians together, and hopefully they do something cool, like Mandalorians do.
Yeah, I hope they're gonna answer Lord Deathman's questions from last week, that we get to see how they make little Mandalorians. But anyway,
Well, they can take everything else off. They just have to keep the helmet.
Helmet on. Oh boy.
Yeah, sorry. I would kind of like to know what my babies sort of kind of look like. But anyway, now I'm gonna go full Reed Richards and make a stretch. We got a sort of kind of a little bit of setup towards the First Order. We have a lot of talk about cloning. Somehow, Mr. Snoke will come into play. So I'm going to ask the question to all three of you. Are we going to see Snoke at some point in The Mandalorian? Will that maybe the season finale? Let's start with Murph.
That would be a bold choice. I'll just put it there. Just because of, like you said already, how divisive the sequel trilogy, I guess it's called, is. And in that character in particular, I think with the first film, it was like we were expecting better things than to him just show up and get, spoiler, cut in half. And then, that's kind of it. That would be really interesting and a pretty bold choice. But then again, I don't know how many seasons they really plan on doing The Mandalorian for. So maybe they'll just be like, hey, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm asking you guys. Taylor?
If I had to bet, I would say no. At this point, I think it's even if you're not worried about pissing people off, I think it's too early in the history to bring in Snoke. They could do it. I mean, it's not like I've read some rule that says that he wouldn't be there yet. But if I had to guess, I'd say no. At least again, not this season. And it's a good question of how many seasons they think Boba Fett's going to be. Mandalorian is going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if they went with like 5 seasons and stopped it. I've seen some stuff online where there's a lot of talk that Ahsoka is going to become more of the central series going forward when it comes out, and that's in the same timeline. So they might have like a season or 2 of overlap, and then end Mandalorian and have the Ahsoka series go on from there. And then of course there's going to be other series set in this area as well. Mm-hmm. So it may be more likely that we see more First Order and Snoke in later series.
Yeah, good point. Lord Deathman, how do you see these kind of stuff?
I am definitely going to say no to any Snoke theories. It's hard to tell how the fandom feels about the character of Snoke. I know that there's a faction of the fandom that's like, wow, the biggest red herring Star Wars ever threw at us was Snoke. But then there are people who are like, oh, Snoke, what a great guy. And but it's I guess it's safe to say Snoke is a polarizing character. But in order to really answer your question, you have to be familiar with the timeline of Star Wars, and frankly, my expertise doesn't get up to that level in terms of where we are in time. But maybe instead of seeing Snoke, maybe it would be nice to see some of those Palpatines that, sort of we could fill in the gaps with them, because the last Star Wars movie, in the sort of main story arc, hinted that Palpatine had a son, and maybe there was another son, there were some relatives, like how we get to Rey. maybe those intermediate steps might be more realistic to show, depending on
Mhm.
where we are at the timeline. But good old Snoke, I'm gonna have to, say no on that.
Mm. Would you even like it if they did it?
Probably not. I mean, Snoke is just he's if and again, I know there's a Star Wars fan out there ready to browbeat me should I be even a millimeter off, but Snoke is supposedly like a failed clone of Palpatine, if I'm understanding that correctly. So kind of a character that's literally a proxy for another character. So I'm not really interested in that narratively because the clone doesn't really, I guess, have a history or,
Mhm.
isn't really a part of significant events at this point in the Star Wars timeline.
Mm. Yeah, okay. I'm just, like I say, I was stretching a bit, but yeah, I mean, they are talking a lot about cloning, and they fried the doctor's brain for a reason after they got what they needed out of him, I guess. So, but anyway, that's just my thinking. Taylor?
Yeah, and that actually gets back to the multiple parallel threads going on when you've only got an 8 episode season, which I think is maybe a bit of a stretch. But as far as Snow goes, now, like Lord Deathman said, that there's an element of the fandom that hates the um, sequel trilogy. There's also an element of the fandom that hates everything since Return of the Jedi. Uh, there's an element of the fandom that hates everything associated with Disney. There's a lot of hateful elements within the fandom, unfortunately. But as far as
No.
yeah, I know. But Snoke, I mean, I don't think Snoke was a bad character or a bad idea. It was, of course, the execution, and that was the problem with the sequel trilogy. They didn't have a plan of what to do with Snoke, just like they didn't have a plan of what to do with the second 2 movies after The Force Awakens. And that's where it fell apart.
Yeah, the Force Awakens, I still think it was great. I mean, it was a little bit of a rehash of A New Hope, or excuse me, Star Wars, as it's properly called. But yeah, it wasn't bad at all, and it set up a lot of great things. That we never got those great things is not the Force Awakens' fault, in my view. Anyway, well, after that bit of speculation, I think it's time to rate this week's episode. Okay, Lord Deathman, can I have your number?
Absolutely. I want to give this episode an 8.5. I'm going to go with the halfway mark between 8 and 9. Strong episode. Again, very entertaining. I like the fact that they sort of brought the pirates back and kind of resolved that story. Not a lot of nitpicking to do. I think I am with Taylor in terms of like the attack on the people, the half a dozen people that live in this town. 24 people. And I actually tried to do a head count at once, and I was like, yeah, not a lot of people in this town. Very much, again, that Saturday morning cartoon feel. The people are in trouble. We have to save them. And I also had a nitpick, and maybe this is just me being too nerdy, but I'm like, okay, what is the pirate plan? Are they just going to park this Corvette like right in the sky over this town and just leave it there and keep the guns pointed at them? I suspect there has to be some refueling and some things that have to be done in order for that to be the idea of how they're going to occupy this place. But anyway, I'm sure they could have put the thing back into orbit and just brought ground forces on there to take over the town. But yeah, they really love living in a slum in a junkyard. They totally just want to destroy a place and then open a bar.
Yeah.
Seems to be the
Yeah.
pirate way.
Their reaction to being denied a drink seems somewhat excessive, but anyway.
Right, that an epic reaction to not being served at the bar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to destroy your town and then open a new bar in the ruins.
Yeah, just to get to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Yeah, 8.5. That is my rating. My highlight for the episode, I guess, is really that man pushing that Mandalorian story forward, finally giving them new purpose, the idea of uniting the clans. I love the work from the armorer in this episode. Such a great character, such a great actress. And Katie Sackhoff remains a national treasure as far as, sci-fi and science fiction storytelling is concerned. So yes, 8.5 is my rating.
Yeah, she was in Battlestar Galactica and now in Star Wars. I hope she joins the Star Trek franchise at some point as well.
It's inevitable. It's
yeah.
inevitable. I think she's going to join soon. But please.
Yeah. Murph, can I have your number?
I'm going to go 9 out of 10. Loved everything with the Pirates and Navarro. I really like that kind of Din Djarin and Grogu kind of took a back seat a little bit, like in this episode, and really let Bo-Katan's character, I feel like that's been this whole season really, but really let her kind of, like, she's getting so much more fleshed out, like, lately, and it's nice to see. It really develops these supporting cast. And again, I have to agree with Lord Deathman. I love the armor, that scene whenever she basically storms the, I don't know what you call it, the bunker where they were holding everybody down, and you just see her walking forward with her hammer on one side and whatever she had on the other, and you just know that they're done. You just know that they don't know it yet, but they're done. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was great. And I like that this episode finally tied this season together with a pretty nice little bow on it. I really hope I think there's only 3 episodes left, but I really hope the last 3 episodes are at least this quality, if not better. But 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I just hope we get a Bacta tank scene back on Tatooine with Boba Fett. I mean, that would fit the Mandalorian.
I miss Tatooine so much.
Yeah, exactly. And I miss Boba Fett and Bacta tanks. So, yeah. Taylor, can I have your number, please, for this week's episode?
Yeah, I was wondering about the Pirates too, but I'm guessing that their intent was to stay there until they ran out of booze, and then they were going to leave. That would be more of a piratey kind of thing. Pirates usually don't stay in one place very long. They take whatever's worth anything, drink all the booze, and rape the women, and then they leave when it's run dry. When all of the above is gone, then they would just leave. Also on Katie Sackhoff, yes, Battlestar Galactica. She's also was in the Riddick franchise. She was also a villain in the Arrowverse. So she's nerd royalty as far as I'm concerned. So good on her for doing so well in this show. As far as rating goes, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think it was a really good episode and a real good step in the right direction for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to go 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed the episode, but I really hope what they did this week's episode pays off in the next 3 in an epic way. Otherwise, it is a little bit like The Force Awakens. It promises a lot, but it's still Star Wars. So they will find some way to piss some people off, for sure. That will conclude this review of Champions for The Pirate, episode 5 of season 3 of The Mandalorian. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, you can help us out. Like and share this review and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you really want more of us, join our forum on Sakar, sakar.freeforums.net. I can't say this enough. We would love it if you join us. We will be back with our review for episode 6 next week. And soon we will be reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and other stuff. For now, I thank you all. And also on behalf of our champions, I wish you to be well and be safe. Bye.